Uptown Whittier, where we feature good eats, neighborhood information, and other lively things pertaining to the city of Whittier. Today we're talking to Colleen Costner, owner of the Rusty Monk. Let's go talk to Colleen. Colleen.
Yes.
Let's start this off with the third toast.
Prost.
So, tell me a little bit about Colleen, a little background on...
About me?
Yeah, let's go from the origin, the evolution of Colleen.
Evolution, okay. I guess I've always been kind of a bookish person, really shy when I was younger, and with really just a ton of interests. I've always been into reading things and teaching myself things, kind of like my dad. My dad was the type of person who would always be wanting to learn something new. I grew up working in my dad's restaurants. So from the time that I was 11, my dad thought it was really important that I work my way up from the bottom. I started as a dishwasher for a couple years, and then I was a cashier for him for a couple years before he let me be a busboy. And I did that probably the longest before he let me actually be a server. And it wasn't until I started working here that I was a manager. I actually went back to dishwashing when I worked at Phoenix across the street, so a little bit of a downgrade. But you know, he thought it was really important to teach me humility and the ethic of hard work, and so I appreciate that. I went to college for film, although actually I started as a science major. Decided that I hated calculus, and then chemistry started getting really hard when we got more into the organic chemistry, a little less rewarding. So I was kind of floundering for a little while. I majored in English for a while, and my dad told me you would write really great stories. So I applied to film school on a whim and got in, and you know, that kind of opened me up a little more to different areas of art and adventure. And I worked in the TV industry for a while before I started working here, and I didn't think that I wanted to work here, but I really, really fell in love with this place when my dad showed it to me and his vision, and slowly got more into this management role for the first time, and discovered that of all my passions, and I have many, I really love beer the most.
Nice.
So
Okay.
It's not a bad way to spend a day drinking beer, trying to decide what goes on the beer menu.
For sure. So how old were you when you first kind of got introduced to your dad's restaurants?
I think it was about 11.
11.
Uh-huh.
So you started, you know, young.
Yes.
Being exposed to
Yes.
the culinary side of things.
Yes. Well, you know, I think of it almost more as being exposed to the customer service. My dad was really into that. He didn't want anyone standing around ever. I remember there would be days when we used to work at his golf clubhouse at Griffith Park, and there would be days when there was just nobody there, and I did all my side work, cleaned all the windows, and I'd be like, well, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and read my book. And he would just burst in a hurricane of energy, like, what are you doing? Why are you sitting? What? Clean the windows. I was like, I just clean them again. And then he'd be fixing all the chips. Are the chips? They're all straight? Good. Come on, let's, you know. And he'd have a million things. There was always something that he could be doing, you know. So he taught me to stay proactive that way.
Awesome.
Yeah. But I was actually, to go back to the culinary part, I was a really picky eater when I was a kid, so I never really thought I would be here. And now I'll eat anything. I like pickled pig's feet and blood sausage and, you know, crazy stuff. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
So, introduction to this. So what was you had the experience growing up with your dad's different restaurants, and you said you fell in love with this place, had no really intention of kind of getting involved in restaurants.
Yeah.
And then saw this and fell in love with it. So tell me about, first of all, like the origin of the inspiration of the Rusty Monk, how it started, why it started.
Cool.
And I want to ask you about the origin of the name. So.
Should I start with the name?
Sure.
Okay. So when my mom was giving birth to me, my dad was in the birthing room with her watching old Errol Flynn movies, and he had a habit of kind of focusing on the wrong detail for the situation sometimes. So here my mom is trying to give birth to me, and my dad's like, wow, Marie, check out this movie with Errol Flynn. He's like, look at Friar Tuck, and of course she didn't care, but he loved Friar Tuck because Friar Tuck always ate a little too much and drank a little too much and cursed and fought and talked a little too much. And he liked that dichotomy that he was a man of the cloth, so he was always trying to be good, but he was a little bit rusty at it. And I think that was always kind of his goal, to have a place where people could maybe drink a little too much, talk a little too much, enjoy their conversation, just kind of live in the moment. But I always think that's a sweet story because it starts with me too. So this was like a really great collaboration. Of course, it was my dad that started it all, but I was really happy to be kind of pulled in to the ride, you know.
How cool.
Yeah.
How cool. So talk to me about the inspiration now for the Rusty Monk. Like, how did it all come about?
Well, you know, my dad had been working in the food industry for years, and I talked to you a little bit about this before, how he started at the bottom too as a butcher, and then he worked as a sales rep for a food company for a long time, and he helped kind of develop a couple of concepts for other restaurants, always wanted to start his own, and he did have a couple of restaurants here and there. This was his first restaurant that was just him from the start and totally his vision. And I wish I could tell you what all of the whole journey was from start to finish as he was building the place, but I was working in the TV industry and a little bit of a jerk. My dad he really wanted me to work here, and I didn't want to work here because I had worked for my dad before and I thought I was kind of, you know, past that. And he kept telling me, oh, let me tell you about the antler chandelier, let me tell you about the barber building and this and that. And I'd be kind of like, yeah, Dad, okay. And he had these newspapers up in the window that he had printed with all sorts of monks and newspaper articles about these ancient monks. So I didn't know what was going on in here. But one day, when it was all kind of close to being finished, he unlocked the doors and he brought me in. And I just really fell in love with it. I don't consider myself to be too much of an emotional person, but I literally cried when I saw it all because I thought it was so beautiful, and I really understood what his vision was, which was to be a restaurant that wasn't just about the food, but about the experience and about the community and bringing people in and enjoying their company and guiding them through that kind of a little bit of a food journey. And I really wanted to be a part of it. Worked weekends here while I worked really long hours in the TV industry during the week, and eventually my love for this place kind of overtook that, and so I quit to come over here and be the manager.
Wow. Love story with the vision and the Rusty Monk.
Yes.
So how cool is that? That's awesome. And it's funny, before your dad, before Rusty Monk came about, I remember talking to him across the street, and he said, Paul, I have this idea. I want to turn this restaurant across. They got a good grill. They got the setup, the kitchen set up there, and not the grill, but the housing for kitchen was set up, and that was important.
Right.
I guess when taking on a restaurant, it's kind of nice to have those things. And I remember him telling me he wanted to create a speakeasy. Like, his ideas were so he wanted to speak like a dry cleaner, you know, and you're not gonna you pick up a phone and press a button, and then you're going down through these. So I remember him telling me the initial thoughts before this was even, you know, a reality.
Right.
Kind of what is cool, and over the years see it kind of materialize. But back to you and this. Okay, so tell me about kind of what. Well, first of all, what's your favorite dish?
My favorite dish is the schnitzel, which is one of the original things we had on the menu. Very traditional German dish. A lot of people think it's a sausage, a Wiener Schnitzel, but it's actually, ours is a pork. It can be chicken, it can be veal. Ours is a pork. It's a thin cut, and it's pounded until it gets nice and tender, and then breaded and fried. And we have done different sauces with ours in the past, but right now we've kind of settled on a mushroom gravy similar to a German Jaeger sauce.
Nice. So where did your education on the culinary side come? I mean, just self-taught, pure passion, just digging in? I mean,
I just love food. I love to try weird things. You know, I think probably the last frontier I haven't crossed is I haven't had insects yet, which I still want to try. Everyone thinks that's kind of weird. But like I was telling you before, I was so picky when I was a kid. My parents would take me to Italian restaurants and they would kind of be embarrassed, like, can you just make her a peanut butter sandwich? I don't, you know. And I think my dad always really kind of tried to take me on adventures and open me up to things. And we would go out driving places. He would take me to restaurants after and say, try this, try that, you know. He was so smart about food. We'd go to restaurants and ingredients we'd never heard of. We'd say, what's that, Dad? And he'd tell us, you know, in a really fine detail. And he was a great salesman and a great storyteller. And so he really ignited that love of food for me. But I think that I've always loved traveling too. Food is such an expression of where people come from and what they share together, and I think that's really cool, you know. So that's what I hope to kind of is one of the things that we try to accomplish here is guiding people to try things they haven't tried before and really enjoy the community that they share together while they're trying that food.
Well, you definitely feel it coming in here. You definitely feel the goal of that community and that energy you're trying to create. What about, what are some of those popular dishes people enjoy here?
Well, you know, I think Whittier is a big burger place, and our burger is really popular. We've recently changed the blend so it has a little short rib in it, it's a little bit juicier. The lamb burger is really popular, and I like that because I don't think you can get lamb burgers a lot of places. We make ours from a California Superior Farm fresh lamb with a little bit of mint and cilantro in the patty. It's really great. But I think Whittier's a meat and potatoes kind of community too, and so we have a lot of comfort food here that I think strikes a chord with people. The shepherd's pie is really popular. Let's see, the steak's really popular, and I like that we have mussels on the menu too, because it's a little more of that kind of Belgian French that you don't see a lot in this area.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the pretzel.
Yeah.
Obviously the pretzel is our best seller. We braid it by hand and we make it from scratch and sprinkle it with a little salt and butter, and it's really simple but really well done. And a lot of people come in just for the pretzel and beer.
That's our go-to appetizer. So, popular beers.
Well, my dad championed a lot of beers. I love beer, and that was kind of, my dad quickly realized that as knowledgeable as he was about food, I was kind of overtaking him in beer, and so he put me in charge of beer a while ago. And I love changing up the menu, but you know, there are a couple beers that my dad brought in that I just wouldn't change because they're so good. So I have to share credit with him. He 100% was behind the Bavik, and that's our best seller. People really love that Bavik. It is a Belgian Pilsner in the style of a German Pilsner, and if you don't know anything about beer, Pilsners changed the whole world when they came on the scene. So there's something really universal about that dry, just kind of simple, kind of a crackery malt and spicy hop and a little bit of carbonate. You know, it's just really clean and crisp. The Schneiderweiss that you're drinking is really popular. That is the world's first Hefeweizen, which
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Awesome.
So,
wow.
Hefeweizen was created by the Bavarian monarchs. So for many years, when Hefeweizen was in vogue in Bavaria, you could only buy it from the king and queen. And when Pilsners came on the scene, everyone wanted crisp, clear beers. So the monarchs kind of thought, well, we've kind of jumped the shark on this. Let's sell it. They sold it to Schneiderweiss. Schneiderweiss is the oldest wheat brewery in the world, and they continue to make that Schneiderweiss original from that original recipe.
Wow. Mm-hmm. How cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Let me ask you this.
Yes.
What is the, what's your favorite beer?
Oh man, that's so hard. Like ever, of all time? That's really hard to pick. I'd have to narrow it down to two, because I really like dark beers and I really like sour beers. And my favorite dark beer is the Huge Archer by Anderson Valley. It's aged in wild turkey barrels for 6 months, I believe.
Wow.
And it's just so warm and roasty and rich and chocolatey, and you get a little hint of vanilla from the oak barrel. It's a great dessert beer in lieu of dessert if you don't want the carbs from a brownie or something. And I love, what's my other one? The Schneiderweiss Aventinas Cuvée Barrique, which they only do once a year, I think around Christmas time. And it's a really special beer that they age in a blend of different wine barrels. So it's got a little bit of tartness, a little bit of red currant, but it's been a while since I've had it, to be honest, because they're hard to come by. But I wish I could describe it better, but that's one of my things.
Next round, you got to call me up and we'll share one.
Yeah, sounds good.
So tell me a little bit about what you'd like, kind of people that haven't been to the Rusty Monk. Tell me a little bit about what they'll experience here, kind of what the goal is for the experience you're mentioning.
Cool.
For people who haven't experienced Rusty Monk yet.
Well, we have kind of changed chefs in the past 2 years, so our menu's kind of gone in different directions. But what I really love best about the menu is how most of it is really old school. Just really good sausages. And the sausages are the only thing we don't make here in-house, but we get them from a really great family-run German deli, and they stuff them all by hand from scratch, with real beef and pork, and they smoke them on site. They're delicious. They're really authentic. I think we have a lot of things that are really great comfort food, and a lot of things that you can't get in this area, and that pairs really well with beer. That's my favorite thing is the beer. And I hope that when people come in, they ask questions about beer. I love talking. I probably talk people's ear off a little too much, but I love talking to people about beer and finding them their new favorite beer, especially when people tell me I don't like beer. I take that as a challenge because I think whoever says that hasn't found the right beer for them yet. And I think it's a really social environment. When we first opened, my dad didn't put any TVs in. And he was really proud of that. Someone told him, "You're crazy, you gotta put at least one TV in," so we did. We realized they were right. But I love that this is a place that people can come to just talk and take their time and enjoy each other's company. And that's something that I tried to participate in. And when people are receptive to that and welcome to their table and want to talk, I love it because, like I said, before I was working in film, and I worked in a really small office of 2 people. We were the LA branch of a Canadian company. It was so isolated, and so many people come in and tell me their stories. And I think that's the coolest thing is, you could sit at the bar and get to know, a bunch of different people that night and hear all of their adventures and
connection.
Yeah.
They're European, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kind of that community, that actual slowing down and actually having a conversation.
Yeah, like when you go to places in Europe, like I'm thinking France because I love France. A lot of the restaurants, they're called Chez Pierre, Chez Paul, and it's, like Pierre's place or Paul's home, because the culture there is that you're being welcomed into somebody's home when you're going to eat in a restaurant. And I really love that sentiment, that there's a hospitality to it and a level of comfort. And I think, American culture is very rush. In certain places in Germany, they pour your beer straight down the middle. In America, we pour it down the side so that the head doesn't get too large and we can bring it out to the table faster. In Germany, if they bring out your beer too fast, then people say, "Well, you didn't pour it right. What's going on over here?" So I like that culture that we can really take our time, and the food is an experience in itself, but the food is secondary to the people that you're eating with.
You mentioned earlier, we're talking about kind of beer and the importance of the understanding of this place, not only just great food, but also kind of the complements of the different beer selections you guys have.
Right.
Kind of the variety you have and significance that kind of plays into the restaurant as well.
Right.
Kind of touch base on kind of the beer side of the thing.
Yeah, well, sorry, go ahead.
By the way, you have a great wine list as well.
Thank you, we do,
and
I can't take credit for that. I do, it is one of my intentions to learn more about wine, but I have some really great friends, Michael and Shauna Taccone.
Yeah.
Yes, you know them, they're great.
They're at my wedding.
Yes, yeah, there you go. Then they're a party to be with, but they are the loveliest, least pretentious wine aficionados you will ever meet, and they have really a great palate and great taste, and they helped select the wine menu and still go with me to wine events where we taste wine and kind of help guide me and instruct me, which is really cool. But on the beer side, I love that beer is so versatile for food. We were talking earlier about how beer has the flavors of cooking. It has roasted flavors, it has browned or caramelized flavors, it has spices, it has, fruit like wine does. But unlike wine, there's a little more versatility, not only to pair things in a way that they resonate with the food, or to pair things the way that they, balance or cut through certain components of food, but also to create a suggestion that wouldn't be in your mind otherwise. You know, we were talking earlier about how you can pair a grilled steak with a Rausch beer from Bamberg, and it will make it taste like a barbecued beer because it lends it that smoky flavor. Or, you know, if you pair some camembert with a brown ale, that nuttiness and breadiness in the brown ale makes that cheese taste like a grilled cheese. And in terms of the beer selection, you know, there's something for everyone, like I said. And even though I'm a dark beer drinker, or, you know, a sour beer drinker, which is not for everyone, I really try to balance out the list and have a little something for everyone. And if I think people get a little intimidated by our list because a lot of them are European or unfamiliar, or, you know, but it's my favorite thing here to do, to sit down and help someone go through the beer menu and find something that they're really gonna love. So I hope it can be an educational experience for people who think, you know, like, oh, I didn't think I liked beer, and who knew, you know, that I didn't know that was out there.
You mentioned beer. In addition to other things, you have a couple other hobbies. Beer, one of them. What are some of the other hobbies that you mentioned?
So my mom, she likes to shake her head at me because every once in a while I'll come home and I'll say, Mom, I'm going to do this thing. And she's like, oh, geez, what is it now? Because like my dad, I'm a little spastic in my attention. I love learning new things. I was teaching myself French for a while, and now I'm going to school so I can delve into that a little deeper with my peers. I've had a lot of hobbies over the year. I am a black belt in Taekwondo.
Nice.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Yeah, although I probably couldn't do much damage because I have probably outgrown my peak physical years. I tore my ACL last year doing Taekwondo, so I got to get back into it. But when I was younger, I used to ride horses a lot, and they would have me help them train the horses after a while. I have a lot of hobbies that are in the works that I want. I did stained glass at Whittier. Whittier has a lot of cool stuff to do, by the way, the recreation center.
Wow.
I did stained glass for a while. I crochet. I like crafty stuff. And I like to do adventurous things too. So my next thing I want to do is scuba diving. We were talking about that earlier. And I also really, really want to get into curing my own meats. And I bought all the salts and stuff, and I'm just waiting for a rainy day, I guess, to bring that out. So probably too many hobbies. Got to focus it down a little bit.
How cool.
Yeah.
You're definitely your dad's daughter.
Yes, he was a little...
Super creative, super talented.
Frenetic.
Yeah. Awesome. What are your thoughts on Uptown Whittier, generally speaking, with regards to just kind of the energy up here, the opportunities up here? What are your, like, you know, as a business owner up here, as a restaurateur up here, kind of in the mix of what's leading kind of a movement, little foodie movement in Uptown Whittier, which is kind of putting us on the map. What are your kind of thoughts, generally speaking, on Uptown Whittier in general?
You know,
particularly for people maybe not necessarily, you know, outside of the city of Whittier, but maybe people from different parts of Whittier that don't experience Uptown.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Someone was just sitting there the other day, and they were telling me how, oh, well, we come here every once in a while, but we're from East Whittier, so we don't really drive out. And it's kind of funny how Whittier can be like that, because really when you talk about Whittier, anyone from Whittier won't really call it a city, I feel. They'll say a town, because it has that kind of closeness and warmth where, you know, you can walk down the street and see 5 people that you know. Anytime I ran an errand with my dad, we would walk to the bank 2 blocks down, and it would take us half an hour because we kept stopping and talking to people along the way. And I think that's really cool about Whittier. There's a lot of sense of community and helping each other, and there were lots of great movers and shakers in this town. You know, like I love Marilyn at Parla Bain. I think she has such a great energy, you know, and wants to bring fresh and exciting things to Whittier. And Mike from the 40 he's just so kind. My dad used to call him the Buddha of Whittier. And he's been so helpful to me in the couple months after my dad passed away. But, you know, I think I'm really excited to be here. When I was younger, growing up in Whittier, I went to high school outside of Whittier, and none of my friends ever wanted to come here. They're like, oh, there's nothing in Whittier, you know? And it, at the time, seemed kind of boring, but now I can really appreciate how charming this place is. you know, and I think it's so cool that this is kind of a time where all sorts of interesting bars and restaurants and boutiques are popping up, because there is like a little artistic community here in Whittier. And my dad always thought that this could be a destination city, and I think it is. You know, we get a lot of people come here from cities over like Hacienda Heights and you know, Norwalk or Puente Hills, and occasionally we'll get people from LA come in, and occasionally we'll get people from other countries. You know, I've served a couple of people who were from Germany or France. You know, I got to practice my French, but I think it's a very close and familiar place, but it's a place that attracts people from outside of this place, and I think it's only going to get better, you know, because we have so many great minds working on making this a better place to live.
Awesome. What's on the horizon for like you and the Rusty Monk?
Well, my dad was, like I said, so good at food. He was just really, he knew everything there was to know. It was really fun to sit in a meeting and watch him ask questions about meat, because he just knew exactly what to ask to know what kind of product he was getting. And that's how I feel I am about beer, but I would like to be about other things.
Sure.
You know, Michael and Shauna are going to help me study to get my sommelier. So I really want to keep aggressively learning everything I can about food, so that I can be a good host and you know, help people discover new and interesting things about food. And in terms of our direction with the kitchen, we do have a new chef. Her name's Chef Bev Lazo, and she's so awesome. She just brings such a great energy to this place. It's really been a breath of fresh air.
Awesome.
And the first thing she did, she came in here before we had hired her, just with her family to eat, and she kind of, you know, like felt around to see whether I was, you know, open to talking about the menu, and basically was saying, you know, you don't need this. You don't need this. And there were things, I just so agreed with her. There were things that I didn't really like that other chefs had brought in that weren't really working for this place.
Sure.
So I really think it's cool that she understands what the concept of this place is and wants to bring it back into what we initially started as, which is old school, comfort food, you know, European stuff that you can't get anywhere else on the street. So that's kind of what we're doing, is refocusing it back to a European concept while expanding the beer. And I do want to bring in around the world beer menu, which I'm really excited about. I think it will encourage people to ask questions about beer and explore new styles. So expanding the beer menu, expanding the specials, different food items that we're doing in the kitchen, while at the same time reining it back in to be a little more cohesive and old world.
Nice.
One of my favorite things about this place is that, you know, people come in and they share stories about my dad that I didn't even know about him. He had so many facets to his personality. So the fact that you're telling me about the speakeasy thing, I didn't even know. You know, I didn't even know that that was kind of one of his motivations behind creating this place.
So me and your dad first connected because my wife's, you know, Carrie's mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and Carrie just ended up being at Phoenix by 4 getting a healthy juice of some kind, and met Kyle. She came home and said, I met this inspirational guy named Kyle. You've got to meet him. The guy was diagnosed with like stage 5 cancer, and they gave him 6 months to live. It's on like year 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever the case may be. He's just an inspiring guy. You got to meet him. So I go up and I meet him, and I just opened up a Keller Williams franchise around the corner from him, and I go in and we start talking and instantly connected. And every time someone would go into Phoenix and meet your dad was like, it's no cell phone, no nothing. He was in there with you, and he left you uplifted.
Yeah.
And me and your dad connect all the time. And when I started launching my company, he'd just come in with artifacts, these big boots and things. He'd find these artifacts. He'd come with inspiration, like Paulie P, come check. He'd come show off his new things, you know. And we had I was trying to do something different for sure. I had a vision to change things and just be a disruptor up here. And I was really passionate about Uptown. Your dad was really passionate about Uptown, so I think we connected deeply on that level. Then we did this whole, you know, charitable thing, painting 15 buildings up here with Keller Williams on Red Day. Your dad was part of that. That was cool. And from there, we just, hit it off. He was kind of like a mentor to me without him even knowing. I looked up to him because he was really good with people. He had inspiration. He had vision. He wasn't afraid of pushing the envelope. He wasn't afraid of actually speaking his mind, like regardless, and I appreciate that. There's like no BS, no politics.
Yeah.
And I think your dad, I don't know, you know, you're gonna know the history of your dad more, but just from meeting him, I don't think he took life, and obviously, you know, he didn't take life for granted. I'm sure the second he was diagnosed, I mean, maybe he was always like that, but what I felt like, this guy appreciates every moment of life, every second in life, is not gonna waste time dilly-dallying or wasting time, not going after his dreams, visions, you know, being real, uplifting that next person. And I always felt uplifted and inspired and motivated to do things with your dad. And you know, I was building my company and building it up, and your dad was always talking about the next thing. You know, not only what he was doing now, the next steps for Phoenix, the next vision, and he was always evolving it, which I appreciate. I think it was awesome. Always evolving the menu, always evolving the decor, always evolving the concept. It was wild, like just wild concept, which I thought was very cool. To see this refined focus of the Rusty Monk was amazing. Just to see from nothing, from him talking about, hey, you want to invest? And I'm like, I'm kind of tied up with my own business right now, you know, but he's talking about from the idea, from the concept, seeing him, because I used to go there daily for lunch, really, with the green teas. Those are awesome. Those, what were those? Wheatgrass teas, right? So we go there daily, and my office would go daily, and we used to give like giveaways to Phoenix, you know, it was a little like, when an agent would close a deal, we'd give him a $5, $10 gift card. I was like, oh, thank you, man. He was so humble about these little things. You know, it made me feel so good for just contributing whatever I could.
Yeah.
That was one cool thing about your dad. But kind of seeing it evolve from an idea in his head to him just putting it together, to signing a lease, to getting the space, to finding the contractor who did all this work, to kind of his vision, to the brick. I remember him coming in here, and they found that on the wall there, they found that actually was there prior to, I believe, right?
The green part.
The green.
Yes.
Yes.
It's original paint.
Original paint, so he kept that, and he was just so fond of that original.
Well, you know, originally, he didn't want any of that plaster on the wall. I don't know if I've told you this, but he tried to take it off. He had told me at one point that the binding in there is horsehair, so it's very, very strong.
Wow.
And, I mean, they did all sorts of stuff to bring that plaster down, and it wouldn't come down. So he kind of had to regroup, you know. He went from this idea of having the naked brick to hiring an artist to paint this mural almost as if the wall is decaying out of this old bar. And I think it's a happy accident. It's like, you know, my favorite part of the restaurant, and I think speaks to how he really rolled with the punches, you know. And you know, it is cool that he kept that painting over there, that he liked things with a sense of history. And he liked to showcase things, you know, as their authentic selves, or repurposing things that were old into something new.
It's awesome. You know what else is cool about this place is your dad did a really good job of connecting with everybody. Like from the guy on the street to like the mayor.
Yeah.
And I think that's a quality that's interesting, because I see the diversity here in this restaurant versus any other restaurant in Whittier. I see more diversity here than any other restaurant up here, which is kind of interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool thing. And you know, I love that my dad, he might not have remembered everybody's names, but he always made everyone feel really welcome. And my favorite thing I think about my dad was he was just a really generous spirit. And I think that showed most in the way that he gave his time to people.
Totally.
Yeah.
He was just there with you. He'd take time. I remember being in conversation with him, like full-on awesome conversations, and someone would come up, he'd connect, hold on, Paul, and he'd go connect. And I feel like he never let anybody go out of his sight without leaving them with something.
Yeah.
Whether that's just a time or just awareness, and
Yeah.
that was a huge quality. I mean, that's a phenomenal quality. My wife talks about that a lot as well. Just he made you feel like there was no one else in the room, and he made you feel lighter. He uplifted you. You left feeling better. Every single time I was with your dad, I literally felt better.
Yeah, he was such
Even if we were talking about something that was upsetting,
right.
I still felt good after leaving talking to you, which is interesting.
He was just he was really good at reading people, and I always admired that skill of his, that I really felt like he could see through to a person what was essential about them and what they needed.
Had he always been like that?
Yeah. And I think it was, you know, I think it's maybe partially that he was a salesman for so many years. Sure. So, you know, I don't know, but he was a deeply empathetic person and enjoyed reading about all sorts of stories. His favorite thing was historical fiction, you know, so I think people's lives really interested him, and it made him feel really fulfilled to give to people. You know, he never expected people to give anything back to him. And I think that's what made him a really great friend and a really great host. And it's really big shoes to fill. I try to do the same thing, but it's sad to me sometimes that he's not here, because I don't want anyone to lose sight of how this place started. And I think it started there with his desire to get to know everyone in this community and to make them feel really special and welcome.
That's huge. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, he was an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I miss the guy.
Yeah.
His energy's here.
That's why I really like having this place, is because I just feel like, even when I'm sitting here paying bills and doing crap that I don't really want to do, it's kind of like hanging out with my dad. There's so much of him in this place, and every single corner is something that he designs. All of these paintings he handpicked on eBay, except for this woman here that belonged to my great-grandmother.
Wow.
Yeah, so again, bringing a little sense of history into the place, his own personal history. All of taxidermy is antique. All these lithographs on the wall are antiques that he handpicked in antique stores or eBay.
Speaking of handpicked, let's bring some humor into the conversation.
Yes.
So I remember your dad, when he first opened this place, he takes me to the restroom. Come to the girls' restroom.
Oh, no.
Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. And you look at the mirror and you look back and you see this like hog, right? Like
Yeah.
This freaky hog. We gotta capture that perhaps, and that'd be kind of cool. But it was just funny seeing your dad's, humor and his taste.
Yeah.
Because he was an interesting guy. I mean, he had the taste and the flair and understanding of the historical value, but he also had awesome humor, right? And understanding for people.
Yeah, well, he thought those bathrooms were really sexy. That was what he kept saying when we opened, like, these bathrooms are so sexy. People are going to want to hang out in here. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was a funny guy. Yeah, thanks for doing that, because, I appreciate that you want to celebrate me and that I have to bring my own vision into this place. But I really do want people to remember where it started, because my dad is such an integral part of this place. And
community. I mean, the guy really inspired a lot of people.
Yeah.
He had he touched a lot of people.
Yeah. I have one quick story. So Zach Rager, who used to bartend here, young kid, and when you said that my dad was kind of a mentor to you and he didn't even know it, I think a lot of people felt that way, and Zach used to express that to me too. He loved to tell me this story about when we were, it was our first year, and the whole street was just a big rolling blackout, and everyone on the street closed down. And my dad, being who he was, did something completely illegal, which he stayed open. And he ran down to the dollar store and he got these little tea lights. He came back and he lit them, and it was crazy. It was so dark in here. We're kind of, trying to stumble around writing on our checkbooks and getting orders and doing everything by hand, adding up the bills by hand. It was really busy that night. But he really wanted everyone to stay and enjoy the atmosphere until the lights came back on, and he gave this whole speech like, thank you for joining us here today. It's been an adventure and this and that. And Zach said he looked at it. He had only been working here for about a week, and he looked at him and he's like, I want to be that guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, today I was on a run before I came out. I ran a little 30-minute run by my house, and I was just running, trying to get my groove on before meeting you, and I thought, I look up to the sky and say, brother, I need you, man. And all of a sudden I felt like this awesome enlightenment and this happiness, and I ran the rest of the quarter mile with a big smile on my face. And I'm looking up like this, and actually somebody saw me that knew me, started honking and like waving to me. I'm like, are you okay? Because I'm like, hands in the sky.
I'm all enraptured. Yeah, I feel like there are times when he's almost kind of talking to me. When I first came back here after his funeral, I'd been gone for about 2 weeks, and my dad and we used to sing Rolling Stones in the car all the time together. And the first 3 days that I came in here every single day, whether it was the radio I turned on there or the radio that was playing in the kitchen, it was The Beast of Burden by Rolling Stones that was playing the first 3 days. And I was kind of like, all right.
Wow.
Like he got me, he had my back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome.
Cheers.
To your dad.
To Kyle.